It's a bit of a taster, but we want you to really interact with us in the discussion. So my name is Dr. Funke Bafo-Awuah. Yes, a lovely long name. And I am a clinical psychologist. I'm very passionate about improving well-being, whether you're young, old, but improving well-being for all. And that's why you have this whole concept of living better together. Now, we set this up with the premise of how to provide free information to help people improve on their sense of self. And you may have joined us in our previous webinar where we talked about stress and resilience, but today we're talking about something completely different. We're talking about parenting, the social dilemma. And I have two wonderful guests with me, Erin and Ben, and I'm actually going to allow them to share with you who they are and what passion they have. Can I start with you first, Erin?
Okay, sure. Hi, Dr. Funke, and hello, everyone. My name is Erin Ransom Ofori. I am the founder of Infinite Potential Africa, which is a multifaceted coaching and consulting firm that, in essence, helps people live up to their highest potential. So we do coaching programs around setting goals for families, for parents, for students, for individuals. We do programs on mindset and growth mindset transformation for schools and teachers and again, families and individuals. And yeah, just really excited to be here. Infinite Potential, as I mentioned, is my company. And if you're interested in more about my background or about the company, you can check us out on our website, which is www.infinitepotentialafrica.com. All of our social media handles are there, email addresses and ways to contact us. And yeah, I'll leave that there and just say thanks, Dr. Funke, for this amazing conversation. I know is going to really be great for a lot of parents.
Thank you so much, Erin. And I'm sorry about the beeping because people have joined in a little bit late, but that's fine. We want to make sure we're there for everyone. Erin, thank you. And can I hand over to you, Ben?
Certainly. So thanks for inviting me, Dr. Funke. Great to join everyone this afternoon and evening. And as mentioned, my name's Ben Schwartz. I am a former assistant director of admissions from Dartmouth College. So I bring to this a kind of perspective from higher education and going to college. I also am a coach with many students from across the globe. I've coached students on 5 different continents and travel and run workshops for families, talking about applying to colleges and how to make the most of post-secondary experiences. And then certainly a few other experiences I bring to the table here. I'm a management consultant, so I support not-for-profits, government agencies, as well as large global corporations in making good decisions for their teams and their people. So. And lastly, I am the founder of Sage Experience. So this is a leadership development program that brings students together from across the globe. We're in our 2nd year now and have brought students from 4 different continents. And we actually brought them to Ghana to run programs with student leaders from SHS schools across the country. So we've had some great experiences and really excited to share some thoughts with you today.
Wow. Do you know what? I actually feel very honored to have both of you here today. And just to give you a snapshot, what are we going to talk about? It's parenting, the social dilemma. And the reason why we decided to talk about this topic, I don't know if any of you've watched Social Dilemma on Netflix. Netflix, you need to give me some money because I'm promoting something for you. But it is absolutely an eye-opener. If you haven't watched it, please do after this session today. So what we want to cover today is just some questions. You know, as a psychologist, I have parents in my practice and people that I know, they're pulling their hair out. They're saying, I don't know what to do. My kids are consumed with social media. Now, we don't want to give a presentation that says social media is bad. That is not what we're about today. What we're about today is to have a discussion. You might have questions. We have so many questions that have been coming in. So you're going to see my eyes go over there because I want to make sure that I ask Ben and Erin, make use of them today to answer questions. But before we get started, we're going to have a little poll and I'm going to hope this poll works. So get your fingers out and press the button. And this poll is just 5 questions. Generally what you know. So I'm launching the poll right now. Okay, start voting. Haven't seen any votes. Just put your opinions. There's 5 questions. Okay, seeing some coming in. Mm. Okay, just a few more to vote. I'll be ending it in 30 seconds. Okay, I'm ending the poll right now. I'm going to share the results. Okay, so what do you think when do you think children should have their phones? So it seems like there's a mixture. So it's kind of, but nobody said under 6. So we can breathe, Erin and Ben. Nobody felt that someone should have their phone under 6, but some felt between the ages of 7 and 10, the same majority between 11 and 13, 14 to 16. 14 to 16 seemed to get the most votes with 29%, and over 18s, there was 24% was about people that. Okay, this is interesting. Do you think social media's impact on the well-being of your children? Majority of you said yes. So please do get your questions in, because I mean, I know I've got a lot of questions already, but I think you're on the right page or on the right place for us to discuss this. Who do you think should be responsible for internet safety? Some of you said not sure, but the majority of you said it's the parents. Some of you said it should be the school, which is very, very interesting. Are you aware of the safety features? Really nice to see that there's a large percent that are, and some of you that are not. And do you feel confident in parenting your child? Okay, for those that said no, let's have a discussion. And some said they're not sure, and some said yes. So let's poll now. Thank you. Okay, Ben, Erin, you've seen the results. What do you think? When is the right age to have a phone? I'm going to start with you, Erin, as a mindset coach. If you're coaching a parent, when would you, and if they ask you, what would you say?
Yeah, I think that the poll actually reflects what I view about this, and that is that it depends on a number of factors. I think it depends on the purpose for which you're using the phone. It depends on parental awareness, I think, of the dangers, of the benefits, and of the ways to control the usage. And I also think it depends on the maturity of the child. The sort of self-regulation and things like that. So I don't think that there's an answer. Ideally, I believe the later the better. However, we're not living in an ideal world, and so those factors have to come into play. I think the most important is for parents to assess how available they are to be attentive and responsive, because you just have to keep your eye on how it's impacting the child and be ready to intervene however necessary. So it's hard to say what an
I love the terms attentive and responsive. Ben, I mean, what is your opinion? When do you feel, because you're in the tech world and, you know, I've known you for quite a long time, and, you know, I always ask for advice on technology. So what would you say is the right age for a child to have a phone?
I mean, if we're speaking specifically about phones here, I mean, I do certainly agree that it depends on the family in terms of needs. I mean, is the phone a necessary tool to coordinate in a busy family, but also certainly on the maturity of the student.
Mhm.
I think to the point about, not just what technology and not just what age, but it's also what are the boundaries? It's really developing good habits around that and making clear when the student gets the phone, their first phone, that you're ready to kind of create those boundaries, the norms of using it, when is appropriate, when is not appropriate. And as Erin, as you said, really making sure that you're ready to enforce that or be present in that, because setting those boundaries and not enforcing them is really ripe for bad news.
Right. And I think the term boundaries, now imagine, I know that parents that come to me and they say, I don't know what to do. And the first thing I think, well, have you put the boundaries in place? Now, what type of boundaries do you think could be helpful for parents if they just don't know what to do? Because there are some parents that are in a dilemma. So give me an example of those boundaries that parents can put in place. Can I put that to you, Erin?
Sure. Well, I think one of the first things that come to mind are the parental controls that can be placed on the device. I think we're probably talking broader than just phones, but any device. So there are the parental boundaries, the parental controls. I also think that access, passwords can't be private. Time limits, you can remove a lot of the struggle with your child by discussing with them first, you guys getting their buy-in to these boundaries, asking them what they think is appropriate, informing them of why it's necessary to have the boundaries. So informing them of the dangers, informing them of, some of the negative consequences that could happen if there were no boundaries, and then getting their buy-in. So I think that really your openness and your conversation is probably going to be the most effective tool. But then again, I mean, even adults, we have to set timers for our phones to power off.
That's right.
We have to put our phones in a different room at night,
right.
because this thing is very, very addictive. So some of the things that we might use for ourselves, we can also use with the children.
And I think it's key what you said there, Erin, because remember, our children model a lot of our behaviors. So sometimes we're trying to enforce something to our children when in actual fact we're doing the very thing. And then we might say, well, it's because we're an adult, but is that really the right message we want to be giving to our children? I think I want to add on and ask something from Ben, because Erin talked about internet safety. Ben, can you share any of the internet safety tools or tabs that parents may need to know in how to keep their children safe?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Apple provides, a number of resources through the settings app there. And so under parental controls, everything from what apps are required, allowed for students, for young people, in terms of timing, so there's different features that are possible. And there's certainly some add-on options. You can download different apps that will also provide additional controls. Some of them are free, some of them cost money, but using the built-in ones certainly is a great starting point. Android on Google, I imagine, has similar options. Even on a laptop, there's various built-in parental controls and in the system preferences or the control panel. And so just taking a look at what's available, from timing, access to certain websites or restricting certain websites. The list is, fairly robust at this point in terms of features that parents have control over.
And I'm probably wondering that some people are here thinking, okay, you're talking about Android, you're talking about Google, and it might sound too techy. So I think maybe, Ben, after this, we will get like a little website or some information that we can share with other people. Now let's talk about the thing that's really close in the sense of self-esteem and social media. We're hearing so much, and let's not deny that we're going through a pandemic where things are changing. We're hearing that mental health has increased amongst young people, suicide has increased, until someone last week said, well, no, it hasn't increased. So it depends on who is telling the right information. One thing that I can say is that I can see the impact. But obviously research is dependent on who's backing the research, will give different information. do you feel that social media can build someone's self-esteem? I'm not going to say I know the answer to that. I want to hand that to you, Erin.
I think that it may appear that way, and that's certainly part of the attractiveness. But I would argue that any sense of self-esteem that you're getting from a mediated relationship is a false and dangerous sense of self-esteem. So, you know, getting likes and clicks and things like that, especially for young people, I think is really detrimental to self-esteem, because you're not really building internal, I mean,
Oh, Erin, I think you're crackling.
About your value for yourself is based on, so I think that children and young people
Erin, we lost you. We lost you for a period. We lost you, but your voice sounded lovely. It was giving this echoey type of feel. But for what? Can you just repeat? Can you just repeat the last thing that you were saying?
I think social media confidence is a false sense of confidence.
Right.
I think it's dangerous. I don't think that it's actual self-esteem, because self-esteem is really about how you value yourself, and that should not be predicated on what other people feel or think about you. And so if you become addicted to praise outside of yourself and affirmation outside of yourself, then your self-esteem can be taken from you by external forces as well. So I really don't think that self-esteem could be built online.
I think when you just said now that the fact that social media can take your self-esteem away from you, that resonates. That's powerful. And I think any parent that is on this platform today is just to think about what is the relationship your child has with their social media, and think about how can you understand the relationship. You don't want to be at a tug of war. You want to be at a place where you can really sit and connect with them. Now, Ben, I know that there are a lot of games out there. There are a lot of apps. You hear Among Us, you hear there's Fortnite, there's Roblox, there's lots of games, and kids are so, I don't want to use the word addicted, because I feel it's so harsh when we say children are addicted, but they're so engrossed. And if you take it away, it does look like an addictive form of response. What apps would you say or games are safe?
I mean, I'm not sure it's so much about safe versus unsafe apps themselves. I think the idea here is goes back to boundaries. It goes back to kind of the student, him or herself, kind of identifying, what should their own limits be with that. I am mindful that, there's games can offer a focusing mechanism. They can offer a skill building mechanism. There can certainly be benefits to engaging in, a diversity of games out there. And certainly the tools that make games so, as you said, Dr. Funke, addictive, those are, actually scientifically driven principles that, sometimes the companies are purposefully incorporating to keep young people playing longer. So in terms of, how do we kind of address this? It's not necessarily that you don't play games or should play games, but it's really thinking about, what are the limitations? What are, what is the kind of place you want to get to, and then you can call it a day. But this, this is not just a thing about children. I mean, there are plenty of adults who need to practice, the, self-control, self-regulation around this. And it's men and women in fairly equal measure, which I think surprises a lot of people. So I think recognizing, this is a pretty universal consideration, and developing the personal regulation to manage that, that's the skill.
And I think you're absolutely right. We're hearing words of self-regulation, and what basically self-regulation means, basically be able to manage how you interact with things. And we're also realizing that some adults don't have self-regulation. So can you imagine a parent doesn't have self-regulation, and then we're asking that from the child? And I think self-regulation is a big word. It's a lovely word. It's a lovely term, but it's really difficult because for those that have watched The Social Dilemma, if you know how games are created, it's doing the very thing that children are responding to. It's making them engrossed, making them feel that they can't do anything else. Now, Erin, as a mindset coach and as encouraging parenting, how would you walk a parent through? Have we lost Erin? Oh, no. How would you walk a parent through because I know I've had in my practice parents struggling, and it's actually making the relationship with their child really difficult. And rather than shortening the bridge or getting rid of the bridge, it's becoming wider. So what would you advise parents right now if they're in that situation? Oh, unmute, Erin. You can unmute yourself.
Sorry, I did fall off for a second, so I didn't fully get the question. But you're saying, what can parents do to help regulate social media activity? Okay.
Yes, particularly the games. I'm thinking of the gaming because a lot of reports is that their kids are so, I don't want to use the word addictive as such, but so engrossed. And not just the gaming like Fortnite, but also like Roblox. What tips could you give them to support their child in that process?
I think there's a few things. One, you have to educate your child on the reason why you're so concerned about their being engrossed in it. So how it can impact their attention span, how it can affect their performance in school, how it can affect their
this is reality on the internet. Erin, we're losing you. Erin, we can't hear you.
Or other illnesses.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Erin, she can't hear us. Okay, I'm going to mute Erin for a minute.
You can see it's excessive. So you have a short attention span.
Erin, we lost you. Erin, we've been losing you. I've lost her again. So Ben, I can give a perspective of me as a psychologist. What I would advise parents to do is really begin that step of understanding your child. If your child is addicted to say, really engrossed in the gaming world, really find out a bit more about the gaming world. Really also be a model for your child and put the time limits. The thing about parenting is not like what one parent does that you should do, because every parent household has their values. So what is the values of your home? If the values of your home is to have dedicated time to certain things, then instill that. If you try and come with that hard hand and in that tough voice, that doesn't show that you're actually understanding your child, you will have a really wide gap. And then, when I'm hearing parents saying, I don't know what to do, I'm pulling my hair out, I've lost my child to social media. You haven't lost your child to social media. What you have to do is just rethink and reconnect. Ben,
I'm going to just chime in a little bit there. I think using something they like as kind of structuring their time in an effective way is critical. So if they have homework, this is kind of an obvious point, but make sure that the homework is done first. Make sure that the important things are done first. Let the game be kind of the reward after the fact. Let there be some kind of anticipation and kind of thinking through how you approach this. And I think Dr. Funke, you had actually mentioned this in a conversation in the past, but making sure that things like gaming are really done in public and in the kind of the house space. And so even one of my foster sons, making sure that, you wouldn't bring the laptop or the phone into your room, you'd work, in the office area. And if you were going to game, do it there. So that way bed and game and stress of homework don't all converge into one confusing, stressful space.
I agree, Ben. And I also feel that we can't deny the fact that things have changed in the last 9 months or so. Lots of kids are working online. So even though we're trying to detach them from their gadgets and their devices, now they're going to be spending a lot of time. Whereas before, I remember when I used to do surveys in schools and find out how much time kids were spending on their gadgets, it used to be about 2 or 3 hours. Now, fast forward, kids are probably spending about 12 hours of their waking life on gadgets. What can we do, Ben? What advice would you give, or what suggestions do you have as being in the EdTech world to help parents through this process?
Yeah, certainly, I think there's 2 layers to this. There's the student layer, and then there's the parent layer. And so, what do parents do for their children? This is, building a schedule that works, building routines that incorporate getting outside or doing other activities, things that don't require technology, whether it's reading old-fashioned paper books, or it's doing art projects, or it's taking a walk, or it's, there's various opportunities that can still be built in here that,
yes,
work. And to your point, though, if you have 3 kids at home, 2, 3 kids at home that are all homeschooling or doing online, school, as a parent, that can certainly be stressful.
Yes.
And so, making sure that you as a parent find your own, offline time, personal time, et cetera, I think really, I think it is a bit obvious, but at the same time, I think we get so wound up in everything else that we can ignore it or put it on the back burner, but that does no one any good ultimately.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that when you mention the word homeschooling, because some parents are homeschooling, and we've got one right here, Erin, you're homeschooling 3 kids. What boundaries have you put in place? How have you differentiated being at home and then being at school? And then how are you having a break? That's the first thing I want to know. But yeah, I'll leave it to you, Erin.
Well, let's remember we are in the midst of a pandemic and we're all sort of locked down to some degree. So in terms of boundaries, having a schedule is very, very important. And so during homeschooling, we don't have the same schedule for devices as we did when they were in physical school, because they have fewer options of things. We have moderated that a little bit and given them a little more leeway, but still,
her internet's gone. This is an example of having good internet and not so good internet, and you can't control it. This is, I know that she's in Ghana, like myself, there's some internet companies that are, the wireless is not working well. So we'll catch back at Erin. Now, I want to talk about, this is a big one, Ben. Mm-hmm. And basically, parents are asking, how do they talk about sex education with their kids? And bearing in mind in context, because obviously in Ghana, it's a little bit different than, say, being in the US or in the UK. What advice would you give?
Yeah, and bringing in, also the kind of technological perspective. What I would say is, know your child, know your children, and this is again, an obvious point, but it can take, it can take concern. So building that rapport, checking in, what are they learning in school? What are they hearing from peers? Finding moments. I remember as a foster guardian, as a foster dad, taking a walk with one of my foster sons and having, a frank conversation. And that was really important. And this was actually in Ghana. And, it is tough because there's cultural norms at play. There's family values at play. There's the kid's own perhaps shyness or outgoingness or whatever it might be. But again, it's, being intentional. And I think as a parent, this is a time where, I'm mindful, but being careful not to just be giggly about it as a parent and feeling like it's awkward, to be recognizing that this is human, and this is an important conversation. And from a technological perspective, there are, our kids have access to everything you can imagine. And so if we're not doing it, they're going to find out one way or another. So you can be part of that, or you can be absent from it. And I think we all know kind of what role as parents we need to be playing. So So that just, it's, yeah, I don't know if this is actually a technique here, but just as
it's a difficult question. It's one depending on your morals and how you want to raise your children. But I think, Erin, now that you're back with us, we're talking about how can we advise parents to talk about sex education with their kids. Do you have any?
Okay, well, I think that we have to be honest. I think we have to be careful about the sort of cartoonish kind of discussions about it. We have to get over our own anxiety, because they're going to learn about it one way or another. So it's very important that they learn from us, and that we are open with them. We are non-judgmental about it, because one thing I think is very important is that we create a space for our children to come to us and talk to us.
Yes.
As parents, it is our job to groom them and to guide them, but it's more difficult to do that if they don't speak to us about things that they're feeling, things that they've seen, things they may be considering.
Yes.
And if you respond in a very judgmental way, then they're more likely to recoil. But at the same time, we need to give them everything that we have to help them make the best decisions. So we talk to them biologically about their bodies and the changes that they're going through. We talk to them about the emotional impact of intimacy.
Yes.
We talk to them about, if you are coming from a faith position, you also talk about what your faith says, and really just equipping them with all the information so that their decision making will be sound when you're not with them, because really you can't control what they're going to do. All you can do is feed them with your openness, with your encouragement, with your values, with your advice, sharing your own experiences in an age appropriate way, about or showing what could happen, showing possible outcomes with pregnancy, with emotional issues, just really full circle, a holistic discussion about it.
And I agree. And I think in that discussion, there really should be the talk about pornography. And the reason why I say this is because what I'm seeing, and I'm having discussions with my peers here and abroad, is that we're seeing a high percentage of young kids who are being exposed to pornography. Now, if we think back in the day, pornography was that magazine that was right on top of the shelf, and then it came through in other ways. Now it can be like you're on a safe so-called site and something pops up. Now, we may be surprised if we were to talk to kids under the age of 12, they may have seen something of pornographic nature. Now, this is the thing about when we were talking to you both earlier about the safety net, how safe are our kids on there? And really, things are different. Social media now is social in a sense that it can make friends, you can make friends, but also it's very dark. So I know that I've had to talk to parents, and when they're saying, well, how do I talk to my kids about pornography? Well, I said, well, what did you want to learn about it? Because I know that you saw it, and what did you do, and how did you react? So you always try to imagine what you wanted as a child, not what you experienced, because you might have had harsh parents, but you didn't want them to be harsh. But because they came with their emotional baggage of parenting when they were, how they were parent, they bring that onto the family. But you break the cycle, and you just sit down and, I advise one parent, I have a book that I've written about body changes, and there's a chapter in there. And I said, why don't you both just read that together? The parent came back and said, Dr. Fonke, that was brilliant. And it wasn't magic. All it was a discussion. So the reason why I think we need to talk about pornography, because it's setting people up to fail, and it's setting our young generation to fail, because it's given a false sense of what a relationship is like, what a sexual relationship is like. So if we don't intervene, they will continue. Whereas if you give them the advice, you explore, yes, you bring in what your faith says about it, but have that open discussion. And I think maybe to say, Erin, why do you think it's hard for parents to have the open discussion? You're in the African context, so I'm going to ask Ben about it in the Western context. But why do you think it is difficult for parents to have that discussion?
Yeah, well, I think parents are embarrassed. I think parents can feel like if you have the conversation about it, it means that you're condoning it.
Right.
So we want to avoid. In the African context, I think traditionally there's less discussion. You know, it's a bit more authoritarian. A lot of things go unaddressed. We just act like it doesn't exist, which I think is very dangerous in the context of something like this. So there's a number of different reasons why parents would be reluctant, or they think, okay, my child is, you know, they may think that their child is more innocent than they actually are. And it's not really about your child's innocence, but it's about the world in which they're in.
Yes.
And are exposed to. So you certainly don't want them to get information from out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And over to you, Ben.
I mean, I'm mindful of the diversity of parenting and then the like, especially in a place like the US. You know, I think the reality is that all parents can feel this kind of trepidation when you open that door and not knowing exactly, you know, are you saying the right thing? Are you possibly kind of opening the can of worms or Pandora's box here and you can't close it back up? I would say, you know, putting it in personal terms so much as, you know, if this was a family member that your friend was watching, you know, in this pornography, that's why this is a problem, you know, like putting it in some type of terminology that is still in a bizarre sense familiar, you know, and I think all of a sudden it's a human being again, and making this, you know, recognizing the dangers in the humanity of it, or inhumanity of it, I think are really, you know, potentially powerful if your child is old enough. You know, there's clearly kind of different ages and which this conversation, I shouldn't say age, it's not about age, but maturity and kind of self-awareness at that point. And, you know, if your child's not old enough at a certain point there to bring the technological perspective, certainly you can kind of use whitelists and the like that only allow certain websites for a kid who's only 8 or 9. If you're in that 7 through 10-year-old can have a phone category, you might not be ready to have that the pornography conversation at 7 or 8. And so, you know, there are ways to just say you can only visit these 20 websites, and that's really all you need for now. Kind of grow the maturity.
And I'm imagining telling a child you can only visit the 20 websites. They'll probably want to know, well, what's the websites you don't want me to visit? So it's a kind of a bit of it's a dilemma, right? It's as we, you know, as we're having this discussion, it's a dilemma. Please do ask us any questions in the chat. If anyone wants to ask a question to Erin or Ben, I know I've been getting some questions that are coming in, so I think we've covered most of that. Okay, so one parent is saying, I'm finding my child's personality changing more. How can I help him manage and gain back his attention? That's a real reality.
Yeah.
How can I help him gain? Yeah. I put that to you, Erin.
Yeah. You know, one message I want to get across to parents is a metaphor that I like to use, and I think is really helpful for a number of things. And that is, be in tune with your child's emotional bank account. You need to know whether they're in the black or in the red. You need to understand their love language. And you need to be mindful that you, as a parent, are making more deposits into their emotional bank account than withdrawals. Many of these issues come up with children whose emotional bank accounts are in the red. Right? So seeking the validation, falling prey to the predators, and also looking for, you know, kind of that kind of stimulation, perhaps from pornography could be an indication of that emotional bank account and their cup not being full. I think that's really underneath all of these issues. If you make sure that your child is emotionally well, that their heart is full by you, by their siblings, by their grandparents, by the people in your family, then there will be less need for them to try and less interest in them to try to fill it with something else. Also, talking to your children about things like integrity, about trust. You know, you need to trust that they trust you and your judgment,
Right.
and you sharing with them, you trust them, you know,
Yes.
and that their choices helps maintain that trust. But I think making sure your child's emotional bank account their cup is full is so critical.
I love that, Erin, the emotional bank account. And if it is in the black or it's in the red, I think if that's one metaphor that you can take home today, and is to really sit and think, is my child in the red? And then maybe to think about, well, what would being in the red look like, Erin? Maybe to give, so what would being in the red look like for a parent? What would their child be doing?
Withdrawing, being aggressive or angry, emotional, changes in their school performance, changes in their sleeping patterns, in their eating patterns, being secretive perhaps, so many things. You just have to look out for changes, and those could be indicators. And then asking them, are you happy? Do you feel loved? What is it that I do that makes you feel most loved? Is there anything that I do or anyone in your life that makes you feel unloved? I think they may be surprised by the question, but I'm pretty sure they would welcome it if they're having those kinds of feelings, and this might tell you something. Yeah.
Lovely. And Ben, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, go to the question of kind of the attention point and kind of, just changing it, changing in terms of what they're paying attention to. And I think this is, as change is going to happen. I mean, it's is the change in a healthy direction is clearly the kind of a question here. And, this is, finding where is their bank account, to use your metaphor here, not just kind of what level, but what's, where are the debits and credits coming from? And so to understand what's working and what's not working. I know for my foster sons, we would very intentionally check in sometimes for 2-3 hour conversations each night. And so finding that time and traditions and rituals when you're ready. And those rituals can take many different forms. It might be sitting on the porch, or it might be playing video games with your son. I don't know. It could be, some way that connects, but it says, I know where your attention is. Let me go there. Let me be the mature one and meet you where you're at.
I love it. Let go where they're at. Someone has sent me a private message, so I'm going to read that. So they're saying, as online learning is now what we are facing, which we did mention, how can one keep students motivated away from the device when we are so restricted at home? Fantastic question. Basically, kids are at home, and sometimes what I've had reports, parents have to work. They have to go to work. So their kids are at home online, but they're also gaming at the same time. Now, I want to leave that to you. What do you think, how to advise a parent before I chip in on that? Can I start with you, Erin?
Yeah, I think, you have to look at your family's factors and make decisions and trust your instinct on what could work, but also being very creative. Christmas is coming up, and as I'm contemplating, what kind of gifts to get for our children, I'm thinking about things that's going to take them away from the devices. So So STEM kits and puzzles and outdoor water features and things that will grab their interest and take them out and help them to unplug. So that's one thing. Safe activities that can be done in the pandemic, you know, so perhaps they can't do team sports, but individual sports, you know, do some tennis coaching. My children, this is actually online, but they take chess lessons and they're in these chess matches. And I'm like, oh, that's still critical thinking. So yeah, they can do that. But you know, things that you can do that will be safe for them. Maybe hire an instructor to come to your house, a karate instructor or something like that, or gather, you know, maybe another family that is exercising some of the social distancing protocols that you are, and maybe just limiting to one other family that you might do outdoor thing with. In Ghana, fortunately, in December, we swim.
Okay, don't show off now. Lots of people are freezing right now.
Right. But, you know, get outside, build a snowman.
Yes, true, very true.
The fall leaves, you know, be creative and try to lure them away from.
It's true. I mean, we've got so many questions, but because we're closing and we've got the ends of Parliament, Ben, you work with the older kids and they may be into the gaming and being on their work. What advice would you give? Is it more about giving advice to the parents, or do you think it's giving advice to the child?
I mean, at a certain age, you know, hopefully the student is mature enough to understand, you know, what their weaknesses are. So I typically work with 16 plus year olds. And at that age, they often come to me. And when we kind of do a inventory of how things are going, time management is almost always one of their top 3 considerations. And to that point, you know, a lot of times when we, you know, discuss remedies for this, you know, the reality is it's, you know, what is the source of, you know, what's taking your time away? And the phone, I will be honest, consistently comes up as I just spend too much time on my phone. And I think I had mentioned this to you before, but it's like, for everyone else here, the students that I work with who are most successful in school and through the college process are those who, for their own decision or because of a family decision, do not use social media. And those are the students who are kind of highest performers in these processes, who are kind of on top of their game. And I don't think there's necessarily a causal relationship. You know, I do think there's correlation between a family that has that structure in the first place. So there's, but the idea here is, you know, there is something to be said to kind of limit access to phones. We talk about, you know, giving your phone to your parent when you intend to hunker down and actually get work done. And it's just not a temptation. It's almost an embarrassment to go with your tail between your legs that you didn't finish your homework is the only way you can get the phone back.
But Ben, I mean, we're ending with this message, and it reminds me of the ending of The Social Dilemma. Now, you've just said with what you practice is that the kids that tend to not be on social media or engrossed in their devices do tend to do well. And I remember the end of The Social Dilemma when these pioneers, the ones that created the like buttons and all of that, said that their kids don't have social media. Their kids don't have Steve Jobs. You know, the late Steve Jobs, he made it very clear. And so are we missing something, Ben? Are we missing something, Erin? Is there something so bigger out there that we're in just swimming and trying to get through? But I think just to end, as you know, the topic is parenting, the social dilemma, because we're having a discussion. There is no right or wrong, in my opinion. It's called guidance. It's how much are you guiding your child? How much time are you investing in your child? Yes, you may be working. The thing is, it's about quantity and quality. So if you've got yes, you can have quantity, but you haven't got the quality. The first thing is, how much quality time am I having with my child, with my family? That is the biggest investment you can ever do. And your child will be faced in a world that can be really difficult. But the key is, as parents and as educators, is to help children navigate, because it is crazy, but it's also a beautiful world. There's so much that technology has given. We have a pandemic. If we didn't have technology, we wouldn't have been able to do the online learning for most schools. So it is really weighing it up, but it's really getting into that seat where your child is, understanding where they are. Just imagine you like someone to understand where you're coming from, so to your children. Gone are the days when you say, well, I'm the adult and you're the child, and that harshness, you lose your disconnecting. And then your child will go and find another family in the social media world, and then you will have no control. So get back the connection. I want to thank you so much. I want to thank Erin for your time. And you know what, even though you kept coming in and out with the internet, the quality that you gave us, we are so grateful. I want to thank you, Ben, and I'm so privileged to have you both on today. We're just going to give another poll because you know what, it's not stopping here. This is a tour. We want to help people with information, give it free so we can connect and share. We'll be having this video on our social media platforms, and we'll be sending it to each and every one of you who registered today. So I'm going to share the poll for your feedback, and have a lovely, lovely evening. And you know what? I want to see you back soon because we are all living better together. So bye from me, and bye from Erin and Ben, and I'm going